Welcome everyone. My name is Granholm from the Baltic Sea Action Group, and I'm here with my colleague Anne Nordling.
Hi, hello to everyone.
And the webinar is titled Closing the Gap: How can the private sector boost investment in the environment through agriculture? So we are looking how the private sector, the food industry, finance, insurance, the market overall can support sustainable agriculture with incentives and support for investments. This webinar is part of the Water Drive project, which is a 3-year-long Interreg project looking at how through water-focused actions we can boost sustainable rural development and deliver positive impact for the food chain as well as for the environment. The project is producing tools for technical decision support as well as for cooperation and new participatory models, as well as strategic and policy recommendations. The program of today is that we have 3 speakers or panelists. After me, we have Ulla Luhtasela from Nestlé, the sustainability manager for the Nordic region. Then we have farmer Jari Eerola from Setälä Eerola farm in Finland. And then we have a farmer consultant, Lukasz Czech from Poland. And after that, we have plenty of time for open discussion. This topic is based on the interest of stakeholders, and actually it goes way back. The Water Drive project is gathering a community of people who have long worked for agriculture and environment issues in the Baltic Sea region, and there, of course, we are all aware of the environmental challenges with the Baltic Sea, with eutrophication, which the climate change is intensifying, and there's increasing pressure to find solutions in agriculture that both can minimize the environmental loading, but also can make agriculture resilient and sustainable in the future climate, whether we have to deal with extreme weathers, floods and droughts, or pests, or whether we then have to deal with increasing pressure from the public to deliver the environmental goods and services that agriculture has potential to deliver. And from the title, Closing the Gap, I think we can describe this gap in different ways. The gap between societal expectations and the current trends that we are seeing, but there's also a gap between what the current policy is delivering in terms of environmental outcomes and what could actually be delivered if we deploy all the good practices. So the idea with this is that with the market involvement for sustainable agriculture, we can close some of the gap between the policy and the reality at the moment. And this is also some of the priority topics that the Water Drive project is looking at from different perspectives. But especially for this market sector role, we are seeing increasing developments in recent years, and I can refer to a recent study where the representatives of the food chain were asked what are the most significant challenges to sustainable development and for future sustainability of food production, and their climate and environment was something that was emphasized by both farmers, financiers, companies, as well as research and policy. So this is a joint recognition that it's increasingly issues having to do with climate and environment that need to be resolved in order for the food chain to be sustainable. It's notable that only all the farmers' federations did not emphasize this. They might have another perspective, but from the perspective of the associations, it's the viability of farming that is the biggest challenge. But we see that that's very much connected to how we are able to manage the climate and environment issues. Then we had a call in this water drive partnership where actually the consumer power came first in the drivers for greener food production that we seem to believe, and also it's very common also from the authority side to raise the consumer power as the main driver for more sustainable production, and we can explore that question more today, and how actually that can be translated then to practices on the farm level. I show or have raised the example of Rabobank from the Netherlands as one actor who has developed credit schemes, especially connected to the delivery of biodiversity values on the farm level, which can then be turned to lower interest for the farmer. And of course, the carbon market is an emerging topic globally and in the EU at the moment, and the EU will soon publish its roadmap paper for the future carbon market. And of course, another initiative by the EU, which is serving the same aim, is the data management and more comprehensive and integrated system of connecting farm data with climate data and market data for better value chain management, and also environmental management. That's also a topic that we will look at more. This work is just based on, it's not a study, it's based on how we have observed the situation in the project, and also within the Baltic Sea Action Group, working with our stakeholders. These are some of the challenges that we have observed and discovered for exactly this market driven approaches to sustainable agriculture. We have issues with the agricultural land market, that the actual practices and the quality of the soil are not reflected in the land market or rental market. We have different types of rental contracts, different type of cultures in different countries that make it complicated to steer activities on the farm level and to commit to long-term contracts. We have, of course, the policy, which is steering a lot. The basic per hectare payment is quite strong incentive for certain type of farming, and not paying for results, but paying for business as usual, basically. Then we have data issues, different perspectives, and we have not really succeeded in presenting the business case so that it's meaningful both for the market and the farmer. And of course, not to forget that arable farming especially happens in a complex open environment with other factors also contributing, which are beyond our control. But then, as I mentioned before, there are also opportunities that we should tap into, and these come, of course, from the climate targets of companies and governments, the ESG, environment, social, and corporate governance framework, which is developing more and more and becoming more precise and more ambitious. Consumers, as mentioned, and then the plain issues that farmers are experiencing in their daily life on the farm level are something that drives us all to look for different solutions. And then there's a variety of actors who we can see that potentially could have and take a stronger role here, and this is already happening. So I think that the path is now set. We just need to step on it. And today we have a few examples of exactly that. But you can approach this question from different perspectives, and it's okay that different stakeholders also have their own motivations and drivers for this. But there are some, I guess, the framing principles that we from this project side want to emphasize. And also these are also, of course, values that the Baltic Sea Action Group is strongly advocating for. So that the first one is that we would primarily look for ways how we can integrate farm level productivity and environment. So that, like we like to say, we can farm food and carbon on the same fields. And then that there is environment-based income flow for the farmer, so that those farmers who are going the extra mile and taking extra good care of their soil and the landscapes are rewarded also financially, either in savings or additional income. And that we also always keep in mind the holistic environmental benefit. We should not look at just one attribute, but keep in mind that it's all connected. Soil, waters, biodiversity, climate, it's all connected, and when we keep this in mind, then we will have eventually good impact also on the broader scale. So with these words, I would like to open the floor for the first speaker, who is Ulla Luhtasela from Nestlé.
Thanks a lot. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon for all of you. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm really looking forward to having also the panel discussion and open discussion in the end. But as Kai said, my name is Ulla Luhtasela. I work as the Nordic Sustainability Manager at Nestlé. And let's see if I can make the technology work and share my presentation with you. I hope soon it will pop up. Please let me know if you can actually see my screen now. At least according to my screen, it should be now available for you.
Yes, it's
great.
It's
very
okay.
Good. So as a Nordic Sustainability Manager, my role is to ensure that when we make global commitments, that we actually also implement it here in the Nordics, and that we do it in a strategic way and implement it where it makes sense from the Nordic perspective. So that's why I work for Nestlé, and Nordic means Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Norway, but I'm based in Finland, so I'm Finnish and I live in the Helsinki area. My aim today is in 20 minutes, and maybe I should put the clock ticking so I know when to stop, because this is such an exciting topic. I could go for another 2 hours or so, but I try to be brief today to give you an idea what kind of commitments we have as Nestlé and what kind of a climate roadmap we have published. I will talk about responsible sourcing of our ingredients, and I will give you an example, a Finnish example in the end, how we are working together with Baltic Sea Action Group. And as a starting point, just to give you a perspective, how big Nestlé is I don't know, maybe many of you know that we are the biggest food company in the world. We've been operating already more than 150 years globally, and we have about 2,000 brands. Some local, like Piltti and Puljonki in Finland, or Zoegas coffee in Sweden, or Oscars in Denmark. But we have many global brands as well, like Fitness and KitKat and Nescafe, just to mention few. But 2,000 brands, so we are a brand house. We have a lot of people working for Nestlé, almost 300,000, and we operate. You can buy Nestlé products almost everywhere in the world, except I think North Korea. We have almost 400 factories. They locate in more than 80 countries, and we are very happy to have 2 factories in Finland and 1 in Sweden and 1 in Denmark. So we do have also Nordic production. And our net sales in 2020 were about 77 billion euros. And every day we sell about 1 billion Nestlé products in the world. So this scale actually gives us, both in good and bad, the responsibility, but also the ability to actually change the food system and impact the ways how we today operate and how we can move towards even more sustainable way of producing our food. Here you see our climate commitments, and these are global commitments. We have promised that we will be net zero. We have net zero emissions by 2050, and this is really the United Nations Science-Based Targets Initiative, where we have also published our detailed roadmap, and I will shortly show you what do we have in this roadmap. It means that within our own value chain, which is a full value chain starting from all our farmers and suppliers to the store level, we need to do real reductions. We have promised to do 20% reductions in our emissions by 2025 and half our reductions by 2030. No offsetting in this global corporate level commitment, and we will also have many carbon neutral products along the way, much faster than 2050. And it all starts from our footprint. 2 years ago, we made a baseline study, or South Pole did a baseline study for us for global emissions. It's very big. It's 92 million tons CO2 equivalent, which is about twice the emissions from Switzerland, which is our headquarter country. The baseline is 2018, and you can see that actually the big part of our footprint, carbon footprint, comes from the primary production and our ingredients. It's approximately 65%, depending on the product category we are talking about. So very much work to be done on that area. And if we look at more specifically, this is the EMENA, zone EMENA emissions, where you can also see the split of the ingredients which are mainly contributing to our carbon footprint. So dairy products, fresh milk, coffee, cocoa are very much in focus, but also other ingredients. And when we talk about our corporate level commitment, it really means that we are looking at our full value chain. If we wanted to be carbon neutral or net zero within our own operations, meaning the scope 1 and 2, we could do it actually fairly quickly, or at least much faster than the 2050. But we look at the full value chain. We believe that our footprint, we should influence all the way, starting from the agriculture and our raw material suppliers, not just the manufacturing and our own packaging and logistics, for example. But we work in all these areas, and I will give you some examples what we are doing in practice. This is a bit busy slide. I'm not expecting you to read it. I have a bit more in the next slide explaining what we do, but I just wanted to give you an overall picture on what are we doing, or how our roadmap looks like, where you can see that if we continued as of today, we would be just having more and more emissions because we are growing all the time. But instead of growing our emissions, we will reduce. We will go to 20 and 50% and eventually reach net zero by 2050. And here I have a little bit more sort of highlights from our roadmap. In the next 5 years, or actually 4 years remaining, by 2025, we have already made some big commitments, and I have classified them a little bit in different areas. So if we look at the first 3 ones here on the left, you can see that we believe that there should be enough carbon sinks in the world. And one way of ensuring it is that we have promised to be 100% free from deforestation. Today, we are approximately in 90%, so there's still work to be done, but it's not something new that we are starting from scratch. So ensuring that our risk ingredients like coffee and cocoa are not causing deforestation is one of the key elements for us. Then in addition, we are also planting trees, so increasing the carbon sinks by planting 20 million trees every year. This will happen in our own value chain. So for example, planting trees on the coffee plantations where we have shade trees and increasing the trees within our own value chain in many places of the world. Then one very big pillar and something that we are very excited about and see a lot of potential is the regenerative agriculture. And we can see that there's a lot of potential in the soil to find carbon if we actually farm in a proper way. And we have promised that 20% of our main ingredients are coming through the regenerative agriculture farms already by 2025 and 50% by 2030. So I think this is one of the main pillars where we are working and where I'm also giving you a Nordic example or a Finnish example in the end. And I believe this will be one of the key drivers to really change the status quo today, how we are farming ingredients. So this is one area, increasing the carbon sinks, but we also very much believe in certifications. So palm oil, coffee and cocoa specifically, which are risk ingredients, will be 100% certified. Here we are also very far already above 90% today, but we will continue to close the gap and reach the 100% already next year actually. Then we are looking at our own operations. So renewable electricity will be implemented in all our factories by 2025, of course, reducing our carbon footprint at the operations at the factories. We also look at our logistics. So we are moving into low emissions options in all our transportation. And as said, we will also build some carbon neutral brands. And we already have some announcements from, for example, KitKat and some Nestlé waters like San Pellegrino, and then some local brands like Helson's Jerk, which is a plant-based product here in the Nordics. So many things happening also on the brand level. Then one big commitment, which is also given as a separate commitment outside of our climate commitment, which is then of course linked together, is our packaging. And we have promised to have 100% recyclable or reusable packaging, including all the packaging and not just the primary packaging we use for consumers. And reducing the virgin plastic is also in a very big area where we are working on. So these kind of things we have already started. They are not new, but in the next 5 years or so, we will certainly expand and scale up on all these areas in a full power. Here you see a simplified version of the map where you can see that we are really going to reduce, and we are measuring all the reductions and all the impact of the projects we are running globally. The 8 most important pillars where we are focusing is sourcing our ingredients sustainably. So I think very much in a focus of today's meeting with you, and I will give you a couple of examples of that after few more general slides. We are also looking at our portfolio. We are looking if we can change some of the ingredients for lower emissions ingredients, or if we can, for example, reduce some meat. We are also shifting our portfolio to be more plant-based. And when we are doing new recipes, we are always looking, are we improving from the sustainability point of view recipes. So many things happening on the portfolio level. And then of course we need to pack our things, our food, to protect the food and prevent food waste. So packaging is very central piece and very important element in our business. But we need to ensure it's recyclable, as I already told you, and reduce the amount of plastic we are using, especially the virgin plastic, and ensuring that actually we also have the infrastructure in place in all countries where we operate in order to collect and sort and really recycle the packaging we put on the market. So many things happening also in around the packaging area. The renewable energy I already mentioned in our manufacturing, also the logistics, how can we drive and transport our goods in a more sustainable way, not just by moving into the electric trucks, for example, or using biodiesel, but also saying, can we be more efficient? Can we create new ways, for example, utilizing train transportation within the countries and so on. There will be also possibilities to remove carbon from the atmosphere. One way was to plant the trees, prevent the deforestation, but also to look and improve the regenerative agriculture practices, which is also one of the elements here today, what we are discussing. Then carbon neutral brands and also the advocacy we do, we try to influence the policy making so that actually it makes sense to be more greener. It would make sense from financial point of view, but also from a policy point of view to move faster and move in a big scale towards more sustainable farming. So these are the 8 pillars which we are driving and which is driving our actions on the local level, but also in the global level. And if I look a bit more closely on the sourcing of our ingredients, it comes in different levels, but the main elements are really to protect the soil and protect the forests. And many of our ingredients, they are actually coming from natural ecosystems, and they are under the pressure from agriculture. And for us as a food business, we can only operate if we can get good quality, high quality ingredients, not just now, but also in the future. For the next 150 years, we want to be on this business, and we need to ensure that we are protecting the ecosystems where our ingredients are grown. And that is really one of the center elements of our operations. Therefore, we plant trees and shrubs to protect the crops. For example, like I said, in coffee plantations, they are very vulnerable. We have been buying new coffee plants, but also the protecting crops, protecting trees around the plantations so that they would support each other. We also believe in enriching the soil through sustainable agriculture or regenerative agriculture, where there are a lot of benefits beyond getting the soil improvements and getting the better harvest, but also to look at the biodiversity, for example, which is really crucial for our living soils. And then we are also restoring forests and peatlands. When we look on how much there is potential to reduce and what we are aiming to achieve in the coming years, if we continued our operations as of today, you can see that we would end up to somewhere around 37 million tons emissions, but while we are growing at the same time. But now with these interventions, we are targeting the 14 million tons emissions, which is a significant decrease over the next decade, or a bit less than a decade we have left. And this, I think I have already mentioned, the biggest potential we see in the deforestation, preventing the deforestation, but also the on-farm agroforestry, for example, planting trees and other plants around our crops, and the improved agricultural practices such as regenerative agriculture, using cover crops, using organic fertilizers and multi-crop rotation. And agroforestry off farm is one way. So there are a lot of projects ongoing, there's a lot of initiatives ongoing, and we do see that we are reducing our footprint and improving things gradually. So today's reality, we can see that we have, especially in Europe, but all over the world, moving to the monocropping, where we are just harvesting one crop at a time, and we are chemically boosting the farming by using fertilizers and pesticides. But where we really want to move is looking at the regenerative farming, the cover cropping, having the greens all year round available. And once we start learning with our pilot projects, when we are getting engaged with farmers, then we can really scale up the regenerative practices. We have millions of farmers who are working with Nestlé, either directly or through our suppliers. So we see a lot of potential in this area, both in the regenerative agriculture, but also in restoring our ecosystems. The reality today in many parts of the world is that there's still deforestation happening. Even Nestlé is not, we are not even able to confirm 100% free from deforestation today. So there's still things we need to do. We have satellite investigations, for example, ongoing to ensuring that the areas where we supply from are not increasing the deforestation. But what we want to start doing is really on storing the nature and storing the forests and moving into the agroforestry models, where we will have several different crops and layers at the same time. For example, the cocoa trees can be mixed with other crops and other trees in this agroforestry model. So this is something that we are also working on and scaling up in the future. If we move to the Nordics, I have some highlights where we are today and what we are aiming to do in the near future. We are, of course, committed to the 2050 pledge, the net zero emissions by 2050, and also the packaging. That is obvious. But when it comes to the renewable electricity on our factories, we are very happy that we can actually already fulfill this commitment next year. So by 2022, we are able to say that all our factories have 100% renewable electricity. We will also have some local brands or some brands here in the Nordics which are carbon neutral, as I also mentioned before. And the fossil-free road transportation will also become reality by 2025. So our customer deliveries are going to happen with the biodiesel options, but also by electric truck, for example, ensuring that we have a lower carbon footprint on the logistics. We are also looking at the efficiencies, for example, obviously, but it will play a role also in our roadmap. And then one of the key initiatives we have in Finland is that we are enrolling our key farmers into the Regenerative Agriculture program, the Carbon Action, which is run by the Baltic Sea Action Group, which is my next slide. So I actually didn't really prepare anything to explain what is regenerative agriculture. I assume that you all know what are the benefits and what are the methods and what are the general rules or general ways of working when we talk about the regenerative agriculture. So I hope I'm not skipping anything important here when I'm not explaining what is regenerative agriculture. But I'm sure you all know that Baltic Sea Action Group operates in Finland, and we were so happy to find such a great partner in Finland who is very experienced and very advanced already in the carbon farming and has a carbon action platform established in the country. So we engaged the last, I think this year, in the beginning of this year, with BSAG, and I'm very proud to tell you that a couple of weeks ago we had our first training. We have some Finnish farmers farming potatoes and carrots and onions who are supplying us in Turku baby food factory where we produce piltti. And then we have a Puljonki factory in Juuka, which is Nestlé professional food, meaning that we have bouillons and sauces for kitchens and big kitchens and restaurants. And we have also onion farmers on board on this program. So the idea is to really help and support these farmers to do the transition. We do this through Baltic Sea Action Group. We have great experts helping us. And once we had this training a couple of weeks ago, we were really happy to see that this group is very engaged. They are very enthusiastic get started, and they already had quite a lot of knowledge. So this will be a great journey. This is also a very busy slide, but I just want to demonstrate that we actually have a full plan. It's not just that we provide this theoretical training once and then expect the farmers to do it on their own, but we will really have several steps on this journey this year and next year, and then even beyond, to ensure that they have enough support and they have enough knowledge and they have enough help and support along the journey. So we already had a preschool where we actually were explaining the basics of regenerative farming. Then we had the 2-day training, a physical training in Finland, where we had lots of experts and lots of good discussions, how they could, what they could do and how they could do things and change things in their farm. Now we will also have support for them to build their own roadmaps and start testing. We will provide help next year with experts visiting the sites and looking at what works and what doesn't work, and also a field trip where they can learn from each other. So a full detailed roadmap planned, and we are very excited about it. But as the world is not ready, and even if Nestlé has a lots of potential to change things, we are not there. This is the beginning of an exciting journey, but we still need to work together with many stakeholders. Nestlé can't do this alone, but at least we are trying to drive the things into the right direction. But we welcome all stakeholders to work together and really see what can we do together to change the agriculture into more green. Now I can see I'm 1 minute over time, so I stop sharing now, and I'm very open to have a discussion around this topic with all of you. I hope this clarified a little bit like how the big company is driving the agenda on this area.
Thank you very much, Ulla. This was really a good deep dive into the strategy of such a global giant, and great to see that you are operating on the very practical grassroots level also. But now we move ahead and let farmer Jari Eerola tell us what is regenerative farming.
It was a lot of information from Ulla, and now I will tell something how we farming regenerative way in our farm. Okay, here. There's some facta from our farm. Actually, it was about 3 years ago when I meet first time regenerative way to farming, and it was somewhere in DSAG carbon action meeting, and at first time I heard about carbon farming there, and I think 3 years is it's such a short time to learning so much as I am learning. There's a lot of information, but it was very interesting and very motivation way to farming. Okay, our farm, as I told, we have regenerative way to farming, and our farm owners is me and my wife Elisa, and totally we have field area 155 hectares, and we have only 55 hectares, about 55 hectares owned, and rest are rented. And as here in Finland we have a lot of forest, more than 300 hectares, and mainly incomes comes beef cattle. We growing up bulls, and there's about 180 species, bulls. And we have long history. This farm is being our family more than 350 years. Okay, I tell something about beef farming. The calves comes. No, can you take back? Yeah. Calves comes from other dairy farms. Maybe it's 100 kilometers circle around our farms, and it comes our company, cooperation company Atria, and they drive the calves to our farm. And about crop rotation and crop field farming, we have crop rotation, of course, because we have cows, beef cows. We need grass, and it's everything based to grass. We have about 40 to 50 hectares grass, and rest is grain, and we are growing up barley, wheat, oat, and those protein crops like raps and bee, and sometimes we have a renovation plant, and mainly we should plan crop rotation so that we have at first grass, and after then we have 1 year grain, and after then we have protein crops, raps or beer, and after then 1 year grain again, and that is main important because we don't have grain. We have only 1 year grain, and after then something else like protein crops. And bee we using in feeding, animal feeding, and mainly grain, of course, too. And in Finland, mostly we are growing up spring grain, but nowadays I am learning more and more growing up winter grain, and nowadays we have done more than half grain areas is winter grain, and I hope and I think grain production will be increased in the future, and I think our yield level is going a little bit up. I hope so. And of course, winter grain is more productive than spring grain. And most of yield we used to cattle feeding, and part of grain yield we can sell out to food industry. Okay, next year. Yeah, animals. I think something our animals production, and it's kind of idea. It's to growing up bulls. Yeah, bulls cows comes from other dairy farms, as I told. Milk calves are about 14 days old when they arrive to our farm, and slaughter is age is about 18 months, and they are weighed about 380 kilos then. And our feeding is based to grass, and concentrated feed is less than 40%. It means that we have a lot of grass in feeding. Mainly feed is product at our farm, and we must pay outside only milk covered because the calves are so young. It must at first about 6 weeks using milk. They eating milk. Milk covered, it's and concentrated food for young calves, and feeding salt and minerals is needed to buy outside only, and everything else we product at own farm. In northern part in Finland, they must buy concentrated food for everyone because it can't growing up, for example, grain there, and many farmers using there. But we are located so short here in Finland that we can product everything, almost everything here in own farm. Okay, manure and slurry are organic fertilization, and it's using in field mainly. We must buy outside only little bit nitrogen, and of course because we talking about regenerative farming, we must take care of fields, peoples, of course animals. And I must to say that we have good production results, and it's based to high animal welfare. And meat production is about 650 grams meat per day per animal, and it's good level. And we must using antibiotics only maybe 5% of animals. It's very low level. Okay, next year. Feed cultivation, and main principle is minimize field tillage, and we using basically only cultivator or disc cultivator, and blowing is using seldom. Sometimes it's needed use blowing if there's some problems with fields. We can use blowing. And it's very important that understand that we are minimizing plant protection too, and we are using plant protection only for against weed, and we are using glyphosate using only 5% field area per year. Some years ago, we using a lot of plant protection, and many different products, and glyphosate we were using almost half of our field area before, and nowadays it's of course it's less in costs, and it's easier because we doesn't need to use so much plant protection herbicides. Yeah. Next, yeah, and it's very important to maximal connection. And we are using renovation plant radish products, and it's for make better field to product lot of organic material to soil. And radish is seeding at springtime, and it's possible to seed winter grain in autumn after radish. And I have using radish sometimes when we have the field where is not so much organic material in soil, and its product very much like you can see here in picture. And the other way to make connection is using collector plant, and it's seeding at the same time and in spring than at spring grain. And after grain harvesting, it's this collector plant, it's continue growing up, and the field is green very late on autumn. And of course we are using in winter grain collector plant too, and it's possible to seed at springtime too, if you have special machinery for this. Yeah, and next year. Yeah, and we are doing cooperation with Anora. Before it company name was Altia, but nowadays it's Anora. And we are product together barley to brand which name is Koskenkorvavot Climate Action. And yeah, it was first time in summer 2020, and this summer it was second time. And this product is regenerative farming barley, and with what is that meaning for me? It's a very interesting and motivated opportunity for us, and it's a very big motivator to change whole farming to regenerative. Yeah, maybe we can take next year. Yeah, I think there's everything what I have to say now, but if you have questions, you can make it, and I can answer if I can. Thanks, and you can visit our Facebook site and see something what what we are doing here in Finland.
Jari, thank you for a great presentation. We will take the questions later on, but we will continue now with Lukasz' presentation, please.
topic today and my presentation, it would be about agriculture, incentives, and bureaucracy. So a lot of interesting things to cover in one presentation. So firstly, a little bit introduction about me. So I'm a farmer. We have 250 hectares with pig production, and I have experience with banking because I was the main analyst for livestock sector in biggest agriculture bank in Poland. And after banking, I run own company which is helping farmers, startups cooperate together, work together, make networking, or reach European funds for development, for research, for investment in agriculture. So I'm cooperating with many farmers, and also I'm creator of the biggest internet group for farmers in Poland with over 100,000 farmers involved. I want to say, because our topic is about incentives today, and from my experience, and I'm making the documentation for European funds since my primary school. So as a child, my father couldn't manage, the Excel file properly. So I was after primary school, I was fulfilling all the documentation. So the European funds for agriculture are for the whole life with me. And for me, it's the KPIs, the system of bureaucracy, the system of documentation is like fighting with burglary by giving fines for citizens because of buying improper doors. So the aim is good, but the procedures and how it looks like is not so good in practice. And my point of view that it's farmers gonna farm, and farmers mainly want to do farming instead of making documentation and bureaucracy and spending time on fulfilling documents and reporting what they're doing on the field. They just want to do the things on the field. And for example, from our research, that between 10 and 15% of daily time is spent for things related to documentation during average working day. My point is that farmers are focused on their work instead of documentation or complex system, even if such systems are strongly supporting financially. I have even today online session with one farmer who said, okay, I could make even 50 euro per hectare less, but I want to live without the burden of documentation and additional controls. And from other point of view, also the bank credits supported by European Union are also much more costly for banks in comparison with standard loans, standard leasing, and standard credit lines. And banks always are often afraid both of complicated environmental measures and additional documentation, because all the measuring is additional costs for finance sector. And in Poland, for example, because I'm speaking from Polish perspective, the public support is so complicated that 95% of farmers in Poland are outsourcing it. And I spending many hours of traveling just to collect the signs and documentation every year. And from perspective of farmers, the public support is the labyrinth of KPIs, which is very hard to understand by average farmer. And according to whole complex European system of support and incentive, it's like creating new fences which have to be jumped over. So if farmer want, for example, to invest in combine harvester, he is looking for the program where he could, with help of consultant, write the whole story that this combine harvester is environmental friendly. And we have to generate, a lot of documentation, a lot of meeting, a lot of calls to create the whole story for making this investment green, but it's still the same combine harvester. So maybe someone should think about how to make it everything much more simple. And for example, if we have no-till, just in my imagination, the definition of no-till is something very complicated, because such problem could be solved by certification of equipment, visiting of the fields, or checking optically the coverage of soil by the crops or the mulch. And I can imagine that documentation from such procedures could be very costly and very hard to meet by farmers. And it's a very important thing, because I think in the future with the Green Deal, majority of income in majority of European countries in farming would be generated by direct payment or supporting activities. So farmer, they will farm what they want, but they will farm these crops which would be the most heavily supported by programs of European Union. So it's extremely important to think how we make very efficient and very clear and very transparent information about all incentives. And the next example is, for example, about the carbon markets in United States. So there was the survey this month where 22 of US farmers which are using the cover crop techniques, the carbon capture techniques, are not eligible for funding carbon capture programs. So it's very complicated. And if we are thinking about the future common agriculture policy, the carbon capture is not strong point, like for example 25% of area for organic farming, or reduction of fertilizer by half, or reduction of use of antibiotics by half. So it's hard to say that carbon capture would be clear and would be reached very fast in European agriculture. And besides I'm a farmer and I'm a consultant, I have also developing the software in some European Partnership for Innovation Group, which is helping to use and existing data related to direct payment. So it's something very similar to FAST system, but it's mainly dedicated to credit scoring. So if we are thinking about incentives and ecosystem of solving problems related with processing data about incentives, we have firstly think about direct payment, because every farmer has to confess with all crops to government in every European Union country every year. And for example, I have in my farm 280 fields to report, because in my part of Eastern Poland the fields are very small for many years, and the scrapping and rewriting this data for documentation is very costly problem. And our goal of our solution is to automate almost everything what we can in agriculture, basing on direct payment. So in our solution, we just put the files from direct payment, and our credit scoring system could automatically assess the size of farm, the crop chain, the income forecast. The data are scrapped and used to check farmers in credit scoring database to showing his loan history, or we also making some automated crop optimization, that the software is showing how much farmer could earn if he would join some agri-environmental programs. So for example, more nitrogen catching crops, or less cereals, or bigger variety of crops inside the crop chain. And such solution could scrap all crop data about the crop production in 1 year in around 40 seconds, because the direct payment files are very large usually because of the screens of the maps with the fields. And it could also shorten the credit scoring process to around 15 minutes. And the same could happen with some assessment of environmental projects. And the same is happening with onboarding to new applications. Like in the same time, we could scrap all the geospatial data to input in some application like for example, Satagro, Xarvio, and other IT applications, because it's very, very long-lasting projects. Like putting all the fields in my farm is something like 5 working days. And we also have now on the MVP stage the crop chain optimization software, so we could check and forecast very fastly and autonomously which environmental program would be best for the farmer, which instant calculation of effects of the finance of the farmers. So thank you for the meeting. I hope that I catch the right time of presentation. I hope.
Yes, thank you, Lukasz. You were very precise on the timing, and thank you for adding this other aspect to our discussion, which I did not raise in my introduction, that it's also that bureaucracy that farmers are experiencing, which is maybe limiting their time and energy for practical farming development. Maybe here with Anna, we have some questions to you 3 panelists first. So let's start with a round of these and then broaden up.
Yes, I have just 2 quick questions to Ulla and Jari. But first, Ulla, what do you think about this bureaucracy point of view from a Nestlé, from a big company point of view? What do you do so that the farmers do not have to, or so that it's easy for the farmer to go into regeneratively or to regenerative farming practices? What do you do as a company to ease that work?
I was just saying that's $1 million question, and when I was listening to these presentations, I truly feel sorry for the farmer, because as said, they should be focusing on farming and ensuring that you are doing the smart practices, and if you need to report everywhere, both to get the incentivized from the CAP or the government, and now also the industry. It's tricky. I can't really promise that we would make it easier, because also as a global company, we need to ensure that, for example, if we are making any claims, that we can verify the claims, and it's not based on just some general understanding, but that actually you also have measurements in place, and that we can be honest and truthful and transparent with the claims we are making. I don't really have a solution how to make it easier. I certainly hope we are not making it even more complex, but to become a vendor or a producer for Nestlé as a starting point, it's not very simple. We need to ensure that the collaboration works, that we have a good quality, that everything is legal, everything is fulfilling the legal requirements. If I think about our potato farmers, for example, who are farming for infant nutrition, you can understand how sensitive category that is, that we need to actually, every batch that we are receiving, we are investigating for different environmental parameters that they are legal. So I'm afraid that if we move into the regenerative farming, it depends on, I mean, you can do it without having any claims. But I think the reality is that the farmers should get some benefits financially. And if so, then obviously you would have to demonstrate that that's true. Also from the industrial point of view, if the food industry wants to make any claims or talk about it, it should be somehow verified. And I think we should harmonize the ways how to do it. And not every company should invent it on their own. So maybe that would be helpful, at least that we could use some common rules, some common grounds on doing it and harmonizing things at EU level, and also, so it would be applicable for all companies, because obviously I think most of the farmers, they are producing for many different industry stakeholders and not just for one company. It's the same for our suppliers. They also produce for other companies. So at least those kind of data collection methods should be harmonized. Maybe that would be helpful. I don't know if our farmers have experienced it be more difficult with the regenerative farming coming from the industry requirements, not just the governmental requirements.
Yeah, maybe we can ask Jari Eerola if he could tell us a little bit about if there was a lot of paperwork connected to the collaboration with Anora.
of course, there's something paperwork, but we made that to cooperation with PSAG, with Juuso Joona from Tynäs farm. It was such so easier. No, I don't know. It's not so big problem, but of course, it had doing everything very carefully, of course.
Yes.
Maybe Jari, I have a question for you. That's I don't know if you have experience in organic farming, and don't get me wrong, I have nothing against organic farming. We also supply organic products for our portfolio, a lot of that. But my understanding is that for organic production, there's quite a lot of do's and don'ts, which are listed and need to be verified annually by inspections. So compared to the organic farming, do you think the regenerative farming could be an easier way to improve the environmental things without increasing the bureaucracy?
Yeah, actually, we are not organic farm, and I don't know not so much that organic farmers bureaucracy, but of course I know I have been learning organic farming, and I have a license to being in organic farmer too. But I think there's such a much bureaucracy in organic farm, and I think it should be easier if we can use more data. I think many organic farmers they're using only paper and pencils, and I think data and in systems in future it helps a lot. I think so.
Yes, like Ulla said, it's probably what the market and businesses need: harmonized data and comparable uniform data from the value chain that is a basis for these kind of scaled systems. Would this, Lukasz, the idea you presented about this data sharing, have you thought of the value of this kind of system for these business cases, for the value chain management? Could it be the answer that company like Nestlé is looking for?
Yes, I think so. I think so because you know, when we have the process and for example, we have the same process run by government, run by corporation and company, and I always could bet that the process is better organized in corporation, because I know I was, for example, during studying time, I was in the corporation and also in the Ministry of Agriculture, and I know how the processes work, and I would always bet on the private sector, of course, because private sector has more market incentives, not public funds, to be efficient. Yes, and it's usually, I think, better organized. But the problem with the corporation, I think, is the bridge between farmers and corporation is bigger than between government and farmers. Because usually I understand markets and agriculture society in Europe that usually farmers have some, how to say, the representatives of, for example, farmers union is active in politics, and I think it's not so common in the large private sector, for example. But I think the Nestlé was at the beginning found as the farmers cooperative. Yes, so maybe it's a little bit different in this case. But I think that it's a little bit too far between corporation and the farmers, because very often seeing, you know, for example, marketing materials or communication of corporations, the farmers are usually shown as obscure people, you know, without the right knowledge on the one hand, or on the other hand, they are shown as super futuristic with drones and all the autonomously driving tractors, and the truth is in the middle.
I think you have a really fair point, if I may comment, because I mean, with some farmers, we have a direct contact, like the farmers in Finland who we are now engaged with the Carbon Action platform. So, but those are special farmers because they farm for baby food production. And sometimes in the baby food production, we really need to even know the piece of the land where it's farmed, because the legal levels for contaminants, for example, or using the pesticides is very limited and very strict. So we build direct relationships with farmers. Also in some countries, for example, with our coffee farmers, but knowing that we have millions of farmers, of course, Nestlé can't engage with everybody personally. So very often there's a supplier between, and very often we need, for example, with vegetables, they need to be peeled and cut and frozen. We don't really have that technology ourselves. So unless the farmer is also doing that, they usually go through a middle supplier. And then those suppliers obviously are also in a very key players because they need to be able to trace back. If you have farmers, both organic and regenerative and traditional, so you need to be able to sort of mitigate all this complexity in the middle. So you are offering the companies the right fraction or a right portion of your supply. So I think we can't really forget that sometimes the food industry don't have a direct influence on the market. But of course, food industry can do it through the procurement agreement, for example, that you have some specific agreements. What are you purchasing? What we are purchasing? What are the criteria? And that is usually done for the supplier. And then they need to be dealing with their farmers. But there are means for companies like us that we can reach out directly to the farmers as well, but usually in collaboration with the supply chain between us and farmers.
Yes, I wanted to continue on this, what you said before, Ulla, about the standardization and maybe we can call labeling or something that could help the industry to follow and manage the value chains and ensure the quality of the product. But how about from the farm level? Do you, for example, Jari, see that some kind of label or standard, which is common for everyone, could be the way to bring some additional income for you or to help show the real value of your production?
Yeah. It's not so easy to say. I think, yeah, maybe some kind of label should good idea. And if we only concentrate to measure only carbon, it's maybe it's not only good and best way to measure. We should take others than like biodiversity and so on at same label inside this label. Because if we think about meat production like beef and pig production or chicken, carbon level is not same. And in beef we have maybe 10 kilos per carbon is 10 kilos per product kilo, and in pig it's about 2 kilos per product kilo. They are not same level, and it's not so easy to customers to make in shop make right decisions.
Yes, thank you. It's a difficult question to be answered right now, but we saw this hand by Miro Jääskeläinen. You had something to ask?
But yeah, I'm Miro Jääskeläinen from Soil Scout, and well, we are one of those kind of agri or envy or soil data production companies, and we are one of the rare ones that are built for kind of as high as possible automation, low maintenance and some sort of data with some special care on the kind of data ability to share and deliver data automatically to other sources, and thinking about the need for the data, kind of how to produce the data without too much effort for the farmer. So we need some sort of maybe more markets for the data even before it is sure what's done with it, and some tools to set some sort of automatically qualify it or label it so that it can be used for various purposes even before we exactly know what they are, but the quality could be controlled later on. And of course then more service design for kind of instruments that are meant to be used by farmers at farms and not by installed and maintained by engineers or scientists like the current market mostly is. But we're taking some heavy steps on underground continuous permanent monitoring, and are happy to cooperate and are looking for all kinds of cooperation points for such ideas. That was about my point.
Thank you, Miro. Following on this, if we ask Ulla, talking about the data and monitoring on farm level, what are the parameters? Well, what would you need to know more on the farm level in order to manage your value chain better? Do you have something where would you take this?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion on the company level as well right now, what to measure and how to measure, and what parameters we should be following. The starting point has been that we want our farmers to take the training and start learning and start testing the methods. And I think what makes it a bit complex is that there's no one toolkit that you can just give for the farmer and say, go and implement, because it really depends on how your soil is doing already before you start, and what are your methods today. So, and where are you living? What is the climate, and what are you actually farming? So I think it is difficult to say that there would be one or two parameters who would give you the real truth. So I think what we are looking is that how they can gradually start taking the regenerative farming practices on board. Is there crop rotation? Have they reduced the tilling? Is the soil green all year round? So we know that by increasing the principal methods of regenerative farming, they are increasing the binding of carbon to the soil. They are increasing the biodiversity, but there's no end solution yet. How could we just go and measure something and say, yes, this is a regenerative farming? And maybe some of the practices were already in a high level, so the improvement will be small, but the impact is big. So it also depends on where are you measuring against. So I think I'm very much trusting and hoping that the Baltic Sea Action Group or the Carbon Action Platform, where we have a lot of scientists who are looking these aspects, will come out with a good proposal. What could we measure? For example, the soil, the organic matter in the soil, for example, could be one of the parameters, or how can we measure and verify how much carbon was bound to the soil? So I don't have really a solution to offer yet. And I'm hoping that with a collaboration with different stakeholders, so the farmers, the research, the policy makers, and us industry, together will create some way of measuring. At least we can verify what has been done and what was before and what is today. So when we know the farmers, and when we can actually visit the farmers, and we can use, for example, Cool Farm tool to measure different indications and different impacts, I think it is possible to make some claims and to talk about the improvements. But would that be enough, for example, for having carbon credits sold? I don't think so. So I think we still need more research and more sort of collaboration, harmonization on in a future to somehow have good rules and good and fair and transparent rules to be used.
Thank you. To the next question, I have a question for Lukasz about your data collecting and your data. How does the environmental aspects, how do you take them into consideration in gathering data?
Okay, so for example, in direct payment in Poland, the farmer could order on the fields one crop from 700 crops, and we are scrapping the data on the level of the field and on the level of the estate field, how to say, and it's documentation and so on, and we are just measuring the autonomously the crop chain on a level of the field and estate field. And our algorithm, because it's MVP at the beginning and we are on the beginning of the grant, it's how to say, the algorithm is changing, is not maybe changing, but scoring the crop chain basing on 25 groups of crops and size of the field. So for example, we are checking, okay, we have large farm, and it would be for them poor decision, for example, or we have small farm, and it would be poor decision for them to go in the sugar beet, for example, in the crop chain, because the logistic minimum for buying the harvester for sugar beet or for something like it would be too high to small farms to attempt. Or we are how to say, translating the requirement of public funds. For example, like we have agri-environmental programs that it's like equation, because I was making the Excel at own to measure such problems of the crop rotation on the field, that you have to get 10% of nitrogen catching crops, 10% of buckwheat, 10% of this, and on this field it has to be no more than 2 cereals in 5 years. And two times per 5 years you have to make the cover crop and so on, and in this year you have to make the soil probing, and it's it's all ending like the labyrinth of KPIs which could be translated into algorithm. So we are scrapping the data from the direct payment, and I'm very happy that the FAST initiative is developed in Europe now, because by the library on the Git, I see that they are making the open APIs, and it's something very important, that everything would be closed, and I see that it should be API there, open API, I think, but I'm not sure that it would be working. The access to API would be give fast and easy. I don't think so, but the idea is very good, and taking the data for example via API from fast system to some application which would be, for example, basing also on the bucket taken from the Cool Farm Alliance, it would be very good. It could make the process very fast, yes, because we are taking the data from one point via API, we are taking data from these tools delivered by Cool Farm Alliance, and we could, in the few minutes make for example, carbon scoring of the farm, because the data is already on the internet, but it still would not be very precise, but it's better than nothing, I think.
Thank you, Lukasz. You have a background also in banking.
Yes.
How does this look like from the bank's perspective? What are their needs in terms of understanding better the farm's operations and credit?
Mm-hmm. The problem is that agriculture is only 2% of GDP. So there is no dedicated solutions for agri-banking. because of this, because if to get the knowledge from the IT system, agriculture system, and banking system is something I think quite rare in our society. And 2% of GDP is not a lot. So also it's something missed by large software providers for banking system. It's also reason why I found the Agrowe as a software solution for the problem. And what is very, very important for the banking sector, it's like that agriculture in developed countries working like economy in developed countries, I can say. So for example, you have poor rain, for example, in some region of Europe, and you know, the financial liquidity of large companies basing on grain trading could go down, you know, because, and it's only because of the rain. So it's, you know, it's something strange in very, very modern economy based on expertise, data, you know, high margin services, and it's very hard to predict that, okay, our large company which we are providing the capital is losing the financial liquidity during to lack of, how to say, water liquidity even on the field. Yes, so it's very, very strange, and also due to lack of proper risk management tools, it's hard to assess the risk in the agriculture sector, because I don't know in how it works in Finland, but in majority of post-communistic Europe, the farmers are not relying on a standard profit loss spreadsheet. So it's a whole different in Czechia, Slovakia, Poland, Lithuania. I think that is the same, that the taxation system on agriculture is based on estates instead of income. So I, as a farmer in Poland, I'm not paying the income tax. So I have any documentation about my income. And the same is happening in other parts of Central and Eastern Europe. I think it could be the same on the Balkans, I think. And banks have to create own documentation to measure the risk, measure the portfolio, and measure the customers.
How does this sound for you at Nestlé? How much of your strategy relates to your objective to reduce the risk from your perspective, risk, either economic risk or climate or environmental risk, that you have the interest to secure the supply?
I'm not actually the right person to answer that question. I don't really know the details. I would have to ask our supply chain. We have a procurement who is handling our supply. But obviously I know from the factory point of view, for example, that very seldomly we would have just one supplier of the ingredient what we are supplying, that there's always alternatives, not just because of the bad harvest year or climate impact, but also in delivery problems. Also, if we find anything in our analysis that there's too much pesticides, for example, which we can't use in a baby food production, then we would have to have alternative supply in order to proceed with our production. So obviously the flow of the raw materials needs to be constant when you produce in an industrial scale. We can't just stop the production and say we will do it another day. So in that way it is quite important, but to go into the details how we manage that and how big part of the strategy that is, I can't really give you an answer. But maybe I would like to say that the whole ESG management and how we can be transparent on what we are achieving, how we are progressing with our commitments, for example, it's becoming extremely important. All the external stakeholders are measuring what we are doing, and they need to have transparent information to do that, because we also, even we are the biggest food company in the world, if we want to change the ways of working, if we want to develop new things and new portfolios, we need investors. And the ESG rating is becoming even more and more important on that, because people and companies and governments, they want to invest on the sustainable companies, and to be able to ensure that we are a sustainable company, you need to be having a transparent data to show the progress. So in that respect, it plays a really crucial role role in our strategy.
All right. Let's ask Jari also as a farmer, and if there are any other farmers in the audience, so maybe you can also react, or representatives of maybe insurance companies. How do you manage risk, Jari, on your farm, economic and climate risk? Do you buy crop insurance or other insurances, or do you mainly manage risk by your farming practices and crop rotations?
Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe there's some kind of risk, but if I think what I'm doing, I think it's going risk level is going a little bit down. It's not so big risk to do this way, doing this way to I must think, is there somewhere risk? Of course, we have economic risk. There's our support from EU. It's the basic level, and after then there's coming what we are product, and if we are minimized our fertilizers and herbicides and so on, we doesn't need you so much money, and there's not so much economic risk, of course, that's way. And I don't know, in our farm, I think we are doing nowadays better economical results than before.
So you have noticed some positive changes then, and the risks are smaller. Are you going to continue with the regenerative farming practices after this?
Of course.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
of course. If we think how much fertilizer costs nowadays, I can't. It's too expensive by fertilizers nowadays, and our fertilizers using level is only 30% than before, and that is main reason to continue regenerative farming.
Yes.
May I comment?
We have a short moment, but we're going to speak to Staffan Lund after you, Ulla, but a short comment from you, Ulla.
Yeah, just a short comment. I think this is amazing and exactly what I wanted to hear, because our understanding is that this is a win-win. If we help the farmers to get started and we give the practical knowledge and help and support on doing the transition, we really hope that the farmers can benefit from having a better harvest, the reduced cost, and also in the long run they are better, protected against the climate change. At the same time, when they are also helping with the battle against the climate change. And I'm very happy to hear that you can confirm that that's happening. And that's why we need the pilot farmers to really to be inside of the farmer culture, bringing these good messages and encouraging others to join. So great to hear.
Yeah, but it's not so easy to make change for every farmers. I'm very lucky because our farm we have we don't not so much animals and we have enough fields. But if there's farmers who have very intensive animal production, for example, it's not so easy. I think it's same situation for very intensive potato farmers like you have.
Okay. Well, thank you. That was good answers. Staffan Lund, if you would like to present yourself and maybe turn the camera on and
Yes, it's pretty dark here, but I have the camera on. So I'm from Sweden. I work on the Water Drive project. I have a question to you, Lukasz, and thank you very much for all those very interesting presentations. You know, Water Drive is about this transition of agriculture towards more sustainable practices, but and we I wouldn't say 100%, but almost fully work on, if we talk about policies, it's about public funding policies. But how do you see this change over time? When you do another Water Drive project in let's say 10 years, do we still talk about the public funding, or do we talk about industrial contributions or consumer preferences?
I think we would still talking about the public finance, because how to say, I think that the costly activity for the environment is like paying taxes. Everyone wants to say that he's doing it, but nobody wants to do it because it's cost, like tax. It's every activity has the cost in the tax, and every activity has the cost in environment, to be sure. And our current financial system shows the larger company is, the easier it is to avoid the taxes. It's, I don't know how it works in Finland, but in Poland it works in this way. And I think it could be very possible in the same way with environmental costs. And I'm concerned that we would still be speaking about the public funds, but because no, everyone, and it's normal, you know, in our current capitalist system, that everyone wants to reduce the costs. Everyone wants to reduce the taxation of their own activity, and we are speaking about something like the environmental taxation in reality, and it would be still taxation. And because it's taxation, a lot of people want to avoid it. Yes, and for example, you know, I am cooperating with many farmers. Even my farm is such case that farmers, in case there is a profit, the farmers are doing a lot of environmental activity. So, for example, in my case, we introduce precision farming. We cut a lot of mineral fertilizers, and we are buying the waste from biogas production. We are in the environmental programs. And from my practice, from my experience, the best three things to make, you know, it's not like we need you know, 100 ideal how to say, the example, the test farms. We want, you know, a few millions better working farms. Yes, so for example, like giving small amount of manure or slurry every year is something good for environment. Regulation of the calcium and magnesium in the soil is something very cheap and very efficient, and it's not very popular. Or like Ulla said, the crop chain. The crop chain is the base that we have to get the cereals, the oilseed rapeseed, the soy, or the winter wheat, the soy, and against the winter wheat, and it's good. It's good because monoculture is something maybe not in no-tillage corn with dairy or with cattle production, because of high manure, it's getting better and better for the soils. But fighting monoculture, and it was done in current common agriculture perspective, is something good. But the problem is that the whole system is ending like, you know, large labyrinth. And for example, there was some infamous case, I think it was in Poland, maybe in Bulgaria also. So for example, that there was something like extra payment for making the walnut orchards, and there was such KPI that six trees per 1 hectare is enough to getting the payments. And you know, a lot of farmers related to consultant company was, putting the 6 trees on the field and taking extra monies. And on the other hand, on one hand, we could get, poorly created system with large holes. And on the other hand, we could create a complicated system which is very costly for everyone who is participant of the system, because the amount of bureaucracy is so high.
How about Ulla or Jari? I mean, Lukasz just told us how complicated and maybe inefficient the public system is. So would you have any proposals or recommendations how we could make the policy also to be better aligned with the private interest and work more together with the private initiatives?
Jari, you have experience from both, so maybe you can give your insights. It would be also very useful for us as a company to understand what would be needed from the farmer point of view to make it easier.
Yeah, it's not so easy to say how to make easier for private or common system. Maybe should make some kind of cooperation. Maybe we should have one system for everything. I think so. It's good, and maybe it should make a common system, and there's every data and private sector can use that without money. I think it should be better. It's not so easy, and there's very many different things, and there's so many limits, and who are owner from data. Okay, it should be mine, farmers, but I can't do that because everyone collect data from my farm, and they say that this data is these companies or common, it's its own, but it should be my own, and I should decide who can use that data. But yeah, there's so many problems like this kind of limits.
Thank you, Jari. Strong statement there. Lukasz or Ulla, did you want to comment on this? We are.
I can make a small
time
comment
now,
about because I'm saying about the bad examples a lot of today, yes, but I want to say about some good examples. So, for example, we have these EPI groups. Maybe do you know them? That, for example, there's something like small horizon groups. Like, for example, there is a program in not every of EU countries, but it's like there is obligatory startup or corporation, university, and farmers. And one part of the R&D projects goes to the farmers, one part to the university, and one part to the corporation and the startup, and it works very well. But it's it's like giving the money for the group of people. This group should be characterized in the right way. So it's a small chance of failure, because everyone is holding by everyone's hand, I can say, like dancing in the circle, in the one cycle, and everyone has to move in the one pace and be efficient to get next tranches of the funding. And I think it's a good example of European funds, and it's just example to not be very pessimistic in the end.
Yes, thank you. Ulla, would you like to conclude?
Yeah, maybe as a final comment, I think nobody can do these kind of things alone, not Nestlé as a company. Even we represent like 1% of the food food in the world, even we are the biggest, and also the governments can't do this alone, and certainly farmers can't do this alone. So I think cooperation is the key, and to understand what is needed by different stakeholders and what's the common ground and how can we support each other. So the transition is only possible if we work towards the same goals and do it together. And we need to start understanding each other better. Where are the gaps, and how what is needed from the industry, what is needed from the farmers, and how we can do it together. So the collaboration, I think, is the key.
Thank you, Ulla. Excellent closing words for this. I wouldn't like to add anything more on that. But I just have to have to close this by thanking you all. Ulla, Lukasz, and Jari, and everyone participating. We have talked about the business models that are driven by ESG and corporate sustainability and climate strategies and commitments. We identified the risk management, financial and environmental risk as something that can also drive and surface new business models. And the third contribution came actually from Miro and Lukasz, and this was this about data, and we should also talk about the data market, or create a data market that then can service different interests and different actors. So there is something for all of us to work further with. We are happy with this, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes.
We are.
This was really a pleasure for us, and really good insights and inspiration for all of us going forward. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.